The last dollar. The day's final, molten light bled across the plains, painting the ramshackle porch in tired oranges and deep violets. Josiah settled onto the top step, the familiar weight of his saddlebag resting beside him. Within its worn leather, beneath a spare shirt and a block of hardtack, lay the sole silver dollar. His last. Not for him, not anymore. The screen door whined open. Amelia emerged, her blonde hair catching the fading light like spun gold, a steaming mug cradled in her hands. "Coffee, Josiah?" Her voice, a soft murmur, offered comfort against the encroaching chill. She sat beside him, the scent of fresh brew mingling with the dry earth. "Thanks, Amelia." He took a long sip, the bitter warmth a familiar anchor. "It's for the repairs. Every last bit." His gesture swept vaguely towards the sagging roofline, the splintered fence posts, the hopeful dilapidation they now called home. Ilara, a fiery redhead, appeared in the doorway, drying her hands on a scrap of linen. "Are you truly certain, Josiah? That's a significant sacrifice." Her eyes, usually defiant, held a rare concern. She understood the dollar's true weight, the last shred of his former life, the final, symbolic purchase that had secured their improbable sanctuary. "It's not relinquishing anything, Ilara. It's an investment." He rotated the mug, watching the steam unfurl. "This isn't merely a ranch anymore. It's a haven. Our haven." From the shadows within, Clara, the quiet brunette, spoke. "But what of you, Josiah? You've given everything." Her whisper carried the heavy burden of unspoken fears. They had witnessed his unwavering selflessness, his commitment to their safety and future. Josiah finally met their gazes, one by one. Amelia's gentle apprehension, Ilara's fierce loyalty, Clara's silent gratitude. "I possess everything I require." He reached into the saddlebag, his fingers closing around the cool metal disc. He drew it forth, allowing the dying light to gleam off its worn face. "This dollar gave us a beginning. Now, it will secure our future." He stood, the dollar held aloft like a small, shining pledge. "Tomorrow, we buy lumber. We buy nails. We buy seeds for a proper garden." His voice, usually gruff, resonated with a quiet determination that stirred something profound within each of them. "This isn't just about mending a roof. It's about constructing something that can withstand any storm, any past." He looked at the three women, his makeshift family. Together. Amelia offered a tentative smile, then Ilara's lips curved upward, and finally, Clara's eyes, though still shadowed, held a flicker of hope. The last dollar. No longer just a coin. It was a cornerstone, a shared sacrifice, a testament to the fragile yet resilient bond forming on the lonely plains. Its weight in his palm felt less like a burden and more like a resonant promise of things to come. Whispers in the pines. The scent of pine needles, sharp and clean, filled Silas's lungs as he rode deeper into the forest. He pulled back on the reins, and Lucky, his sorrel mare, halted. A hushed quiet descended, broken only by the rustle of unseen critters and the distant murmur of the creek. He'd told the women he was checking fences, but the truth was, his mind was a tangle of anxieties he needed to unravel in solitude. He dismounted, letting Lucky graze on a patch of sweet grass. The sun, a warm balm on his shoulders, dappled through the dense canopy. He kicked at a loose stone, his thoughts circling back to the letter that had arrived with the last supply wagon. A legal notice, plain as day, informing him that the previous owner's estranged nephew was contesting the sale of the ranch. $1, it had read, a pittance. He'd known it was too good to be true, but a man desperate for a home didn't question miracles. "Whispers follow you, don't they, Silas?" He spun around, hand already on the butt of his revolver. Abigail stood a few yards away, her red hair a fiery halo against the green backdrop, a small basket hooked over her arm. He hadn't heard her approach, not a single twig snap. Abigail. What are you doing out here? His voice was gruffer than he intended. She offered a small, knowing smile. Couldn't sleep. The air was too thick with worry. I saw you ride off. She gestured to a fallen log. Mind if I join you? He hesitated, then nodded, holstering his weapon. She sat, her presence a surprising comfort. What kind of worries keep a man like you awake? She asked, her gaze direct and unwavering. He sighed, pulling the crinkled letter from his vest pocket. This. He handed it to her. Her brow furrowed as she read, her lips moving silently. When she finished, she looked up, her blue eyes reflecting a steely resolve he hadn't seen before. They want to take the ranch, don't they? Looks that way. Says here the nephew claims the sale was invalid. Undue influence, it states. $1 for prime land. He ran a hand through his hair. They'll send a marshal, I reckon. Could take everything. The women, you all, Abigail reached out, her hand briefly touching his arm. We ran from worse, Silas. This ain't the first time we've faced a man trying to steal what's ours. She paused, then added, her voice dropping to a near whisper, there are things we know, things we've seen. Things that could make a difference. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not just the runaway bride, but a woman forged in hardship, with secrets tucked away like hidden gold. The quiet of the pines suddenly felt charged with unspoken possibilities. A new beginning, a shared past. Dust motes danced in the late afternoon sunbeams that sliced through the saloon's grimy window. Elias, his Stetson pushed back, traced the rim of his whiskey glass. The raucous piano and boisterous laughter were a stark contrast to the quiet hum in his own mind. He'd sent the telegram a week ago, a simple invitation, really. An offer of belonging. He wasn't sure what else to call it. A sudden hush fell over the room as the swinging doors creaked open. 3 figures stood silhouetted against the blinding sunlight, then stepped inside, their arrival silencing the chatter. First, Ilara, her blonde hair catching the light like spun gold, her chin held high despite the hesitant glance she cast around the room. Next, Sophia, her dark curls framing a face etched with a mix of apprehension and fierce determination. And finally, Maeve, the redhead, her eyes, the color of emeralds, scanning the faces in the room, her hand instinctively going to the small, worn satchel at her side. Elias pushed himself up, the legs of his chair scraping on the wooden floor. He met their gazes, a slow, reassuring smile spreading across his face. Ladies, he rumbled, his voice cutting through the remaining silence, welcome back to redemption. Ilara was the first to speak, her voice a little breathless. Elias. We received your message. She gestured vaguely. Sophia stepped forward, her dark eyes meeting his directly. You said, a new beginning. But also, a shared past. A flicker of suspicion, or perhaps just caution, crossed her features. Elias nodded, gesturing to a secluded table in the corner. Let's talk. As they settled, the saloon slowly resumed its cacophony. Elias leaned forward, his gaze sweeping over each woman. I know what you all ran from. What you sought to escape. He paused, allowing his words to sink in. And I know you found an unexpected refuge in my ranch. A home, of sorts. Maeve, usually the quietest, spoke up, her voice surprisingly firm. A refuge we risked everything for, Elias. We're not looking for another trap. Her hand tightened on the satchel. Elias held up a hand. No traps. No promises I can't keep. But I'm offering more than just a roof. I'm offering a partnership. This ranch, it's more than just land now. It's a chance. For all of us. He took a deep breath. I'm asking you to be my wives. Not for convenience, not for property, but for a true union. A shared life, a shared future. The confession hung in the air, thick and heavy. Ilara's eyes widened, a blush rising on her cheeks. Sophia's jaw tightened, her gaze piercing. Maeve, however, simply stared at him, her expression unreadable. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the distant clinking of glasses and the off-key plunking of the piano. The weight of their past, their fears, and the audacious offer Elias had just laid before them, settled over the table like a shroud. Gossip and growing bonds. The clatter of tin plates against the worn wooden table was the only sound for a moment, punctuated by the rhythmic creak of the porch swing outside. Josiah, still nursing a chipped mug of lukewarm coffee, watched as Ilara, the brunette, meticulously wiped down the last of the breakfast dishes. Her movements were graceful, almost balletic, a stark contrast to the rough-and-tumble reality of their lives. He cleared his throat. Heard a whisper in town yesterday. Ilara paused, a dish towel draped over her arm. Oh. Do tell, Cowboy. Good gossip is rarer than a spring rain out here. Josiah leaned back, the old chair groaning in protest. Apparently, Silas Thorne's looking for a new foreman. And word is, he's not just looking for a man who can brand cattle. He's looking for a certain type of man. He let the implication hang in the air, a familiar unease settling in the small cabin. Ilara's eyes narrowed. A type that doesn't ask too many questions, I reckon. She exchanged a quick, knowing glance with Beatrice, the blonde, who was braiding Willow's fiery red hair by the fireplace. Willow, usually quick to interject, remained unusually silent, her gaze fixed on the intricate plate forming at her temple. Beatrice spoke, her voice a low hum. Silas Thorne never changes his spots. Always after something, or someone, he shouldn't be. Her fingers continued their work, but the tension in her shoulders was palpable. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windowpanes, and Ilara shivered, despite the warmth of the morning fire. This whole mail-order bride debacle has cast a long shadow, hasn't it? Every stranger who passes through now seems to be looking for something, or someone. Josiah nodded, his gaze sweeping over the three women. He'd given them sanctuary, a new beginning, but the outside world was a persistent predator. Which is why I've been thinking, he began, his voice dropping slightly. We need to be more prepared. Not just for Thorne, but for anyone who comes snooping. He gestured vaguely towards the dusty rifles propped in the corner. And not just with a rifle. Willow, finally breaking her silence, looked up, her green eyes sparkling with an unusual intensity. You mean, more than just pointing and shooting? Ilara chuckled, a brittle sound. He means, darling, that we need to be smarter. We've always been good at surviving, but now we need to be good at thriving. And that means presenting a united front. A family. Beatrice added, and that means understanding each other, quirks and all. We're all in this together now, like it or not. She gave Willow's finished braid a gentle tug. Right, Red? Willow grinned, a flash of white teeth. Right. So, Cowboy, what's your brilliant plan for making us seem like the most normal, boring family in the entire West? Josiah smiled, a rare, genuine curve of his lips. The air, though still charged with apprehension, now held a new, fragile thread of unity. Well, for starters, we're going to learn to shoot straight. All of us. He met each of their gazes, a silent promise passing between them. The ranch wasn't just a patch of land anymore, it was a fortress, and they were its defenders. Blackheart's arrival. The distant cloud of dust wasn't the usual summer harbinger, it possessed a deliberate, malevolent quality, like a fist clenching tighter with every passing mile. Jebediah squinted, his hand a makeshift visor against the westering sun. Looks like we got company, he rumbled, his voice carefully muted so as not to alarm the women tending chickens by the porch. Maisie, her blonde hair catching the fading light, wiped her hands on her apron. Company? We aren't expecting anyone. Her brow furrowed, a faint ripple of unease disturbing her features. Eleanor, ever the pragmatist, straightened from her weeding. Too many horses for a friendly visit, Jebediah. Her dark eyes meticulously scanned the approaching riders, a fine line of worry etching itself between her brows. Jebediah nodded, already moving toward the interior rifle rack. Blackheart. That's his brand of dust. The name hung in the air, a chilling pronouncement. Rosalie, who'd been sharing a light-hearted moment with Maisie, froze, her fiery red hair seeming to dim. The ghost of her brutal husband still haunted her, and the thought of another such figure encroaching on their fragile peace brought a profound dread. From the window, Jebediah watched them converge, a dozen hard-faced men led by a rider on a jet-black stallion. Blackheart. He was a notorious legend of cruelty, a man famed for seizing what he desired and leaving desolation in his wake. Jebediah's jaw tightened. He'd found an unexpected semblance of peace here, a family he hadn't realized he craved. He wouldn't permit its destruction. They're here for the ranch, Eleanor stated, her voice surprisingly steady. They'll claim squatters' rights, or some such legal fiction. Jebediah loaded his rifle with practiced efficiency. They'll claim whatever gives them an excuse to take what's ours. He met the gazes of the three women, their faces a complex blend of fear and nascent defiance. This isn't just about land anymore. This is about everything we've built. A loud, booming laugh tore through the afternoon quiet, followed by the clatter of hooves on their recently laid path. Well, looks like the lone wolf's found himself a pack of sheep, a gravelly voice roared. Blackheart. Jebediah stepped onto the porch, rifle held loosely but poised. The gang's leader, a hulking man with a deeply scarred face and a cruel glint in his eyes, dismounted. His gaze swept over the ranch, lingering on the women now clustered protectively behind Jebediah. A predatory smile stretched across his lips. Heard this place was empty, fellas. Looks like we were misinformed. He took a deliberate step forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his revolver. Looks like we got some business to discuss, Cowboy. United Front. Dust motes danced in the late afternoon sunbeams slanting through the kitchen window, illuminating the four figures gathered around the scarred pine table. Josiah, his brow furrowed, traced a finger along a jagged crack in the wood. Across from him, Scarlett's usually vibrant red hair seemed subdued, her gaze fixed on the worn map spread between them. Eliza, the blonde, chewed on her lip, a nervous habit Josiah had come to recognize. Isabella, the brunette, sat straighter, her eyes sharp, missing nothing. He's not subtle, Isabella stated, her voice low, cutting through the silence. The way he rides the perimeter, the way his men stop just beyond the fence line. He wants us to know he's there. Josiah nodded slowly. Silas Blackwood. Owner of half this valley, and he doesn't take kindly to squatters. Especially not, unexpected ones. He glanced at the three women, a flicker of something akin to admiration in his eyes. They'd transformed his lonely ranch into a home, albeit a complicated one. Squatters? Eliza's voice was a whisper. He wants to run us off our land? It's not technically our land, not yet, Josiah corrected gently. The deed of sale for $1, it's a legal gray area. And Blackwood has more lawyers than sense, I reckon. He pushed a half-empty coffee mug aside. He's been sending veiled threats for weeks, but this is different. He's closing in. Scarlett finally spoke, her voice surprisingly steady. He thinks we're weak. 4 people, one of whom is a man of the cloth. She gave Josiah a wry smile, referencing the mistaken identity that had brought them all together. He thinks he can just scare us away. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windowpanes, and the scent of dry earth and distant sage filled the room. Josiah felt the familiar tightening in his gut, the primal urge to protect. He's underestimated us, then. All of us. He looked from Scarlett's resolute expression to Isabella's unwavering stare, and then to Eliza, who, despite her fear, met his gaze with a surprising spark. "What's the plan, then, Josiah?" Isabella asked, leaning forward. "He won't just go away if we ignore him. We need a strategy, not just hope." Josiah picked up a small, smooth stone from the windowsill, turning it over in his calloused palm. "He wants the water rights, the spring that feeds this whole valley. He's been trying to buy it for years. Now, he sees an opportunity. We can't fight him with guns, not directly. Not yet." He met each woman's gaze, a new resolve hardening his features. "But we can make ourselves indispensable. We can make this ranch too valuable to take by force. And we can show him that a united front is harder to break than he thinks." Redemption stand. Heat shimmered off the parched earth, conjuring phantom currents as Silas rode. The midday sun, a relentless eye, seared sweat onto his brow. The ranch house, once a solitary silhouette, now thrummed with an unfamiliar vivacity. He dismounted, the saddle's worn leather groaning in protest, a rustic counterpoint to the distant murmur of voices drifting from the open windows. Today held no routine, it promised a confrontation with a past he'd meticulously sidestepped for months. Inside, the warm, yeasty scent of baking bread mingled with a faint, sweet floral note. Ilara, her auburn hair gleaming like burnished copper, worked dough on the scarred wooden counter. "Silas," she greeted, her voice a soft, steady current. "They've been expecting you." A knot tightened in his gut as he nodded. In the parlor, Beatrice sat rigidly, her blonde braids coiled impeccably, a book lying neglected in her lap. Isabel, a whirlwind of brunette energy, paced near the hearth, her usual composure fractured by an agitated restlessness. The air itself felt heavy with unspoken queries, with the gravity of decisions both made and impending. "Silas," Isabel began, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles whitened. "We need to discuss Ilara's husband. He's been seen in town." The word struck Silas with the force of a physical blow. He'd anticipated this moment, but the reality was sharper, colder. His gaze flickered to Ilara, whose hands had frozen in the dough, her face drained of color. "He won't touch you," Silas vowed, his voice a low, dangerous rumble, a promise and a threat entwined. "But what about us?" Beatrice interjected, her blue eyes wide with apprehension. "If he finds one, he'll find us all. He'll alert the others." Silas moved to the window, his gaze sweeping over the vast, unforgiving landscape that had become their unexpected haven. He turned back, his eyes settling on the three women. "We hold our ground," he declared, his voice ringing with a newfound conviction. "This ranch, this is our sanctuary. We fought for it, each in our own way. We won't let them dismantle it." Ilara stepped forward, wiping flour from her hands. "But how, Silas? He's a cruel man, and he won't easily relinquish what he believes is his." Silas met her gaze, an old fire rekindling in his eyes. "He misunderstands who he's up against. He doesn't comprehend what you've become. We'll send a message, stark and unmistakable. He'll realize this isn't a place to reclaim possessions. This is a place where new lives bloom, and old shackles are shattered." His hand instinctively sought the reassuring weight of the pistol at his hip. The time for retreat had ended. The time for confrontation had arrived. A new family for Whispering Pines. Dust motes danced in the late afternoon sunbeams slicing through the grimy panes of the ranch house. Luke, his boots thudding softly on the worn floorboards, watched as Maeve, her fiery hair catching the light, carefully positioned a chipped ceramic pitcher on the rough-hewn table. Across from her, Eleanor, her brow furrowed in concentration, meticulously rethreaded a needle, a half-mended shirt draped over her lap. Sarah, usually a whirlwind of motion, was uncharacteristically quiet, polishing a tarnished silver locket with a cloth, her blonde head bowed. "Still no word from town?" Sarah finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken fears. Luke cleared his throat. "Nary a peep. Been almost a week since I rode in." Figured word would have spread faster than wildfire about the new arrangements. He gestured vaguely around the room, a silent acknowledgement of their unusual, yet increasingly comfortable, cohabitation. Maeve set down the pitcher with a clink. "They'll be talking." "Oh, they'll be talking plenty. A man, a ranch, and 3 independent women. It's a story begging to be told." A wry smile touched her lips, but her eyes held a flicker of apprehension. "Independent, yes," Eleanor murmured, finally looking up, her dark eyes meeting Luke's. "But not without consequence. My husband, he's a persistent man. And powerful. He won't let me just vanish." The air thickened with unspoken anxieties. Each woman had a tale, a reason for seeking refuge, and while the ranch offered a semblance of peace, it was a fragile one. Luke walked to the window, peering out at the sprawling, untamed land. "This land has seen its share of trouble. It can handle more. We can handle more." He turned, his gaze sweeping over them. "We're a family now. An unconventional one, maybe, but a family nonetheless. And we protect our own." Sarah looked up, a faint blush spreading across her cheeks as she caught his eye. "A family," she repeated, the word tasting new and precious on her tongue. The locket glinted in her hand. "It feels right. After so long of everything being so wrong." A sudden, sharp neigh from the corral cut through the quiet. Luke's hand instinctively went to the Colt holstered at his hip. "Stay here," he commanded, his voice low and firm. He strode to the door, pushing it open just enough to peer outside. A lone rider, a dark silhouette against the setting sun, was approaching the ranch, kicking up a plume of dust. The rider was moving fast, too fast for a friendly visit. Luke knew, with a cold certainty, that their fragile peace was about to be tested. The ranch, once a sanctuary, was now a potential battleground. The new family of Whispering Pines had just begun. Love blooms in Redemption Gulch. The crisp morning air carried the scent of pine and fresh-turned earth as Josiah surveyed his growing domain. Chickens scratched at the dust near the barn, their clucking a comforting counterpoint to the distant lowing of the new milk cow. He leaned against the rough-hewn fence, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. This wasn't the life he'd envisioned when he'd bought this ramshackle ranch for $1, but it was a life, vibrant and undeniably his. And theirs. A flurry of activity erupted from the main house. Isabella, her fiery red hair catching the sunlight, emerged first, wrestling with a stubborn pail of water. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, but a small smile touched her lips as she eventually hoisted it. Next came Clara, her blonde braids swaying as she meticulously swept the porch, her movements graceful despite the task. Finally, Genevieve, with her dark, thoughtful eyes, stepped out, a basket of freshly laundered linens balanced on her hip. She caught Josiah's gaze and offered a shy, genuine smile that sent a surprising warmth through him. "Morning, Josiah," Isabella called out, a hint of playful challenge in her tone. "Thinking of doing some actual work today, or just admiring your empire?" Josiah chuckled, pushing off the fence. "Just admiring the fine work of my staff." He winked, and Isabella playfully splashed a bit of water his way. The easy camaraderie that had blossomed between them in the past weeks was a miracle. The initial shock of finding 3 runaway brides, each with her own tale of escape from a brutal past, had given way to a strange, unconventional partnership. He, the lone cowboy, and they, the women seeking refuge, had forged a fragile peace that was slowly hardening into something more resilient, something resembling a family. Later, as they ate a simple breakfast of oatmeal and berries, Clara spoke, her voice softer than the others. "Josiah, the well is running a bit low. We'll need to dig it deeper, or find another source soon." A practical concern, but one that held a deeper undercurrent. Their survival here, away from the dangers of their pasts, depended on such things. "I'll take a look at it after I check the traps," he promised, spearing a berry with his spoon. "Maybe there's an old spring further up the creek." Genevieve, who usually preferred to listen, spoke up then, her voice a quiet melody. "I remember my father talking about dowsing for water. He used a forked stick, said it would dip when there was water beneath." Isabella snorted good-naturedly. "Sounds like a folk tale, Genevieve." "Perhaps," Genevieve replied, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. "But it might be worth a try. What do we have to lose?" Josiah looked from one woman to the other, seeing not just their individual personalities, but the collective strength they possessed. "She's right," he said, a surge of pride in his chest. "We'll try anything. We're in this together." The sun was higher now, casting long shadows. The future, though uncertain, felt less daunting with them by his side.